My name is Darren DeBarry, writer-director of The Final Murder, which is actually a dark comedy sequel to the dark comedy film The Last Semester. This first scene here, taking place in the newsroom, was actually shot at the clubhouse level at the Meadowlands. This is the late Sam McKee, who was a terrific guy, a track announcer. He's a really sweet guy who went well before his time. And he's setting up the exposition that Max, who was the murderer from the very first film on the college campus, has killed people at a video store and is now on the run. And where we introduced to Brant Williams, played by me, who is at first an FBI spokesperson, and later we find out has a personal stake in this case because Frank Minetti, played by Scott DiPaolo in the original, the detective, it was his best friend. And that really upped the stakes in this story and provided motivation for my character. And my character is more the way in to Max, as opposed to the first film where it was all about Max. Now, the big question is, where is Max? This sequence here was shot at the Cook Islands, shot by Greg while he was away on vacation. Matter of fact, Greg had gone to the Cook Islands, Bermuda, and Africa and shot some beautiful footage for the original film. And there was so much leftover footage that we put it in this sequel here. Now we combine that with new footage from this new film, as well as short films him and I had made together and separately throughout the years, because the story kind of starts out in the early 2000s and ends in the early 2020s. And you'll actually get to see, well, both of us age, which is really good and lends to the credibility and the reality of the situation. Greg Wilson was such a driving force in these films. I mean, without him and Scott DiPaolo, that first film would never have been done. And his character was so interesting that, you know, we've had conversations over the years. Where would Max be now? What would have happened? What would have become of him? So as my character becomes more and more obsessed with Max, we find out what's become of him, what's happened in his life. Now, Max had gotten away with murder in the first film. And in the second one, there is a mention of him killing people at a video store. Now, that whole mention is really the foundation of the entire story. Because I've mentioned in the previous commentary track for The Last Semester that originally it was a story called The Video Store Murders, where we were introduced to Max. And we found out that he was like this quirky, strange guy who would like murder people for not returning their films on time. And we were just so tickled by that idea that we made The Last Semester talking about Max's early life and how did he become the way he became. Unfortunately, we never got to shoot The Video Store Murders because in the sequence, it would literally be The Last Semester, The Video Store Murders, and The Final Murder. So many years went by from the filming of the original The Last Semester, which was originally called The College Murders, to now The Final Murder. And, you know, Greg got married. I've been married twice. Thankfully got it right the second time. My friend Scott DiPaolo was married, divorced, had moved to Philadelphia, is now back working in Atlantic City. So things just happen. Life happens. People see each other. They don't see each other. Sometimes it's financial. Sometimes it's laziness. Sometimes it's just life going on and people trying to keep up. But what's nice is these films have been a way to kind of keep us together in a sense. Now, here's the character of Brant, who's found Max's diary, which recaps the first film, and it does help to see The Last Semester before watching this film. A matter of fact, I would recommend to anyone who just happened to be online looking around that The Last Semester should be seen before this film is seen to really be kind of, for Max to be understood as a character especially. But this was really made to find out what happened to Max afterwards and why. And it was really fun to explore. It was great to go back to that world. It was great to see us younger. It was great to see us a couple of years ago. It was great to see Greg on that vacation so many years ago. And it was wonderful to use that footage that we had never used and incorporate it into the story again, as well as other new footage of my character trying to find Max. This here was actually shot at house in Lake Riviera where me and my wife lived before moving recently, Lake Riviera in Brick, New Jersey. This here, that flashback was shot at Ocean County College in the Fine Arts Building between Greg Wilson and Scott DiPaolo. And this was shot in Toms River at Scott DiPaolo's old house. where he is killed by Greg's character. And my character will obsess over this for the rest of the film until he has his final confrontation with Max, which, funny enough, I remember was shot because Greg was in town in New Jersey, and we had a really good time, went out to a restaurant, really caught up with old times, and went back to Ocean County College, where the first film was made, and shot that ending sequence, and that was very nostalgic. And then soon after that, COVID began and really changed everyone's world. So this is the Cook Islands again. Oh my God, look at this. It looks like a screensaver. And Greg walking, which is really, really funny. As I always call it, like the Daffy Duck sequence. It was just a really funny visual watching him walk around with those flippers. And he's upset because some woman on the island has her foot on his towel. And he's like, you mind taking your foot off there? And, she tells him in no uncertain terms, fuck you. And he walks out of frame and we hear her scream. And she's dead because you don't mess with Max. It's that simple. But the look of the Cook Islands, the color. I mean, here, this looks like he's almost superimposed in front of this waterfall. He wasn't. I've seen so much of this footage of him jumping from the top of this waterfall with other people. I mean, the fact that he was here on location, and nothing is ever better than on location shooting. The colors are so rich and so real, and you just feel like you're there with him, which was, of course, the point. And then you find out that after a while he needed money, so what does he do? There's an unsuspecting tourist, so he knocks her out and takes her money. And that's just how Max operates in this world. So there he is, and there he's in a car there on the islands. And again, I just love the footage of the islands. I just loved it. And then we're back here in Brick, New Jersey, my house in Lake Riviera. And I love, that was the shed at the house. And I'm on a cordless phone, which really helped date the movie. Matter of fact, when you see me on one, a few minutes before, I make a joke about why would I get a flip phone, that those cell phones are just a fad, they're not going to last. So that was always fun to do. And here we have a flashback, a sequence that we never used. This is Max's father from 1984, played by Mike Wilson, Greg's brother. And Mitchell Wilson actually plays young Max, Greg's character. And this was such a great scene. I don't know why we didn't incorporate it into the first film, but it was so good that it was perfect to put into this. And it was just to explain how his father was just going out for the night with the mother, leaving him at home in front of the VCR pretty much with movies. And, Max is a movie guy. That's the world he can relate to. Now we cut back to the islands where he's breaking into a house. And then there's this whole sequence that Max, spelled, by the way, M-A-X-X. That's special. M-A-X-X. We always wanted something to be unique, even about the spelling of Max's name. So he steals money and takes a flight to Africa. And there's this whole sequence in Africa and this whole beautiful montage with some music we got from the original film that we didn't use, that we used here in the sequel. And there's just nothing more beautiful than Africa. And what was really nice is I got to tie that in to Max's character. It wasn't just like, hey, I'm on vacation in Africa. But we found out, in the first film, The Taxi Driver was one of Max's favorite films. And we find out in this film that his second favorite film was like Jaws, and the other one was The Gods Must Be Crazy, which takes place in Africa, and which we will also send up in a future scene, throwing a Coke bottle from a helicopter, which was a lot of fun to do, actually. And these animals, just the splendor and the look of this, and Max taking all this in is terrific, because here he's the audience. So we're taking it in the way he is, and it's just a wonderful thing to look at. And his character changes a bit. In some ways, Max doesn't change as the story goes on, but when we see him in the last sequence, Max has matured in a way that we've never seen before, and people are informed by their experiences in life. And I think the character of Max is really informed, because he is not judged in Africa at all. Of course, people don't know that he's a killer hiding out there, but he saw a world of no judgment that he had only known once before. That was part of a voiceover that was actually cut, that was in the original film, where he was talking about Sandy, his friend who had committed suicide because she had been bullied. And this whole sequence of of Greg holding onto the cliff was just so much fun. But I really do think that this experience informed him and changed him, as it did Greg Wilson in real life, who spent, about 2 months or maybe 3 months in Africa at this animal conservation, and was really never the same when he came back. I think he had a whole different appreciation of life. And he talked about how important, that time was, and the people that he met and the animals that he saw. And just absolutely gorgeous, and cinematic gold as far as I'm concerned, just to be able to shoot. So now we move now to the year 2005. We will see Max's girlfriend Jane and the art studio that she went on to own and do terrific art at the end of the first film, where Max actually visits her and she doesn't know that he's there, but she kind of senses him, which was kind of cool. And the whole point of that was to have my character of Brant call her up, because now he's been reading the diaries. So he knows that there was a bond between these two. And the next sequence, he's going to be calling somebody from the FBI, as we see Max here having a good time in Africa. He's going to be calling, actually somebody from the FBI will be calling him, to be correct. And that's Zandy Barry, who was in the first film, and that sequence was cut better fit here as a character named Sampson, who works for the FBI, who's not only helping my character by giving him information, but getting him more and more involved with the investigation. Now the character of Sampson himself will eventually be fired for getting nowhere and trying to find Max in the future. And my character of Brant will eventually quit the FBI and become a private investigator. But here, some nice back and forth dialogue. And as you can see, this film was shot a lot of different ways, a lot of different aspect ratios, shot on cell phone, digital camera, iPhone. It's just all kinds of different cuts and mixes, which I think is kind of interesting, because we live in a very, very video age now more than ever. People growing up watching movies on their phone. So I think we feel inundated by these images. So I had no problem doing that. I know with some people it's kind of distracting, all these different aspect ratios. We have, 16:9, and then we go up. But you know what? That's it. Here's a flashback to Sandy and Max calling up her RA to warn the RA that she's going to kill herself. But of course it's too late. This is from the last semester. And we will flash back to, well, that's the end of Sandy. And this nice little moment here when the zebra was staring at Max, he was thinking of her, just the beauty of it, the innocence of that. And there was something beautiful and innocent of Sandy, as well as the fact that she was completely wacky, but that part related to him. This sequence here was also cut out where Minetti is on the phone, cut out from the first film, and we cut in this new version where I'm warning him of his death, which is an impossibility. So we discover at the end of this sequence that this is just a dream sequence. That's it. And this is something that's been haunting Brant Williams for a long time. He'll never be able to stop the fact that his best friend was killed by Max. And he wakes up there, and where do I wake up? But in Bricktown, at my mom's house. We needed the bed, and there we go. And that's actually her kitchen as well. And I'm waking up and thinking about all this, and thinking about Minetti, drinking some water, and all of a sudden the camera's going to show me from the front here. Tactfully use the camera angle so you don't see much of my body, because hey, you don't want anybody to turn this off and stop watching the film because this guy's so out of shape. So anyway, he puts that picture down that he's looking at, which is actually a picture of Minetti right there in the middle, and our good friend Alan Boyd on the right. And for a little piece of trivia, Alan Boyd there was actually Gil, who worked in the police station in the last semester. And that picture was actually taken the day that Scott DiPaolo moved out of his house in Toms River, and the three of us just got together. We hadn't seen each other in some years, so that's a nice memory that we got to throw in here. Here's that send-up I told you to the Gods Must Be Crazy with the Coke bottle landing, and Greg finding it just like the character Nick Sal finds it in the Gods Must Be Crazy. And again, it was just so cool, this Africa footage. And time has moved on. Also, it's 2012 now. So time has moved on, and Greg's character has spent his time in Africa and observing all this stuff. But what is it? What is the significance of the Coke bottle? In The Gods Must Be Crazy, it made Nixow realize there was a bigger world out there, so he went to investigate it. In the character of Max, he says goodbye to all the nice people in Africa that he had met, and he leaves Africa. So, in a sense, that little thing that happened in The Gods Must Be Crazy to Nixow happens to Max. He knows it's time to go. It's time to leave. It's time to explore something else. And what will he find? What will he do? And this whole little sequence, too, explains how he's been able to thrive in Africa. He made money and lived comfortably driving the evening animal tours, and which was great, as we had all the footage of that Greg had taken. So much footage, so many beautiful animals, so cool. Again, a wonderful experience that Greg was able to share with us. And what's nice is, in turn, we get to share it with the audience of this film. And here we find out, as I had mentioned earlier, that Sampson was taken off the case, that my character, we'll find out, left the FBI, that Jane's character will move her entire art gallery to France, and she will be out of the story. But we find out that Max actually called her and talked to her for an hour before she left. My character never finds out about this whole thing. But what's wonderful is my character does finally get a cell phone. So there I am with my old iPhone 4, which I had for a very, very, very long time. Something along the lines of, I think, 10 or 12 years, which is pretty amazing. But I kept a journal and stayed obsessed with what was going on. And became a private investigator. Swears that he will one day avenge Frank Minetti. And then in the middle of this nice sentimental music done by Keith Leonard, we do that sound of the record player cutting off and saying enough of this, this sad-ass music, and then explains what's going on from here. And that was kind of a fun little thing to do narratively. Here we have Arnold Sidney Jr., who is a terrific actor we met on a film called The Secret years back, directed by Ian J. Keeney. This was actually shot in the same business building in Toms River that you saw Zandy Barry earlier, who played the character of Sampson, but this is downstairs. That's Jeffrey Hewson in the back, a terrific actor I had worked with before. And this is a sequence that was needed. It came from a short series we did called House of Death, but we used it to continue Max's story because Greg acted very Max here. And we thought this would be a great way to cut this into the film to explain some things that, he came back from the money he had with Africa, went into business with this guy, and then this guy pretty much took advantage of him and fired him. And this will also be the same place where Greg will meet his wife. Oh, if you look real quick on the left, there's my buddy John Horgan. And here we are. Greg is upstairs going, it's the holidays. Can't something work out for me? And something will indeed. This is Natalia Delano, who will become Natalia Delano Wilson, Greg's real-life wife. And he meets her at this party. She's all passed out, and Max, being Max, will take advantage of that fact. Gives her a kiss and brings her over to the elevator. And this was a fun shot and a fun thing to do. We saw the character of Sampson come up this elevator before, so it's great to see this elevator go down. I added this funny romantic music as these two discover each other, and this will eventually become Max's wife. Now we cut back to, this is a building in brick, which is supposedly my private investigation building, and he's talking to an FBI guy played by my brother, Chris, and he's Agent Johnson, which was a little nod to Die Hard, Special Agent Johnson. And we're having a conversation that will push this whole thing forward, that they found Max's car. And they get the idea that, we're going to find out from here that he had, moved on to the Cook Islands, and then eventually my character will find out that he moved from the Cook Islands to Africa, and then from there, he doesn't know where he is. So little by little, I'm a couple steps behind Max, but I'm getting there, slowly but surely, with the help of this FBI guy, my brother Chris, who is a terrific, terrific actor, now an attorney in Florida. And this is my character calling Johnson back and telling him that, Max did live in the Cook Islands. There were murders there were break-ins, and there was a trip to Africa, and that I ended up, talking to people that Max had been with in Africa who had no idea who he was, that he was a killer. And then I realized, boom, that's where the trail ends. And this was a lot of fun to play. Here we cut back right here, Greg. And this was so much fun to play, and it was so much fun to be in the world. This was actually upstairs in the office in my house in Lake Riviera. And now we hear all this wedding music as we discover, yes, Max has married. There's a shot of Natalia in Florida in the Shark's Mouth, and these two have gotten married. And this wonderful footage of them being together. Greg got so much terrific footage, and it really added to the credibility of this. And we find out that she has no idea he's a fugitive. She thinks his name is Max Wexler, which is a little tribute to the first movie, the name of the university he was at. So he used that as a fake last name. We found out that him and her are still making movies together, that they're actually making movies together. But Max will not post them online. He's just doing it for his edification. So that sets up this whole story that, as we're going to see as the movie goes on, a bunch of short films that Max has done with his wife, which are some films that him and Natalia had done, which were really, really a lot of fun. And then we moved to Florida, and he's talking about life, and he's talking about film, and he quotes Shakespeare, "Life is but a poor player who struts and frets his hour upon the stage and has heard dumb words, a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury signifying nothing." That fella on the Wave Runner was actually Woody Wilson, and I believe that was shot in North Carolina in his home, and he was on the Wave Runner. Greg's father has passed since, and he was a terrific, terrific guy. That shot was in Bermuda. Here's a Daffy Duck shot again. This was Greg in the shower screaming, which kind of cuts back to how he's thrown in there by the frat boys at the beginning. And he's just talking about his life, so we're getting a little bit more information about him and the way he sees things. And now we cut back to Brant Williams walking outside my old house in Lake Riviera. I remember we were able to get this shot because we had just had the roof done at the house, and these fellas had a dumpster. And for whatever reason, they couldn't hook the dumpster in the truck they couldn't hook the dumpster up to the truck to take away. So it stayed in our house for another week. And the great news is I was able to put the camera on it and get this shot of me leaving, starting to jog in the whole Lake Riviera area over by the park. And I thought it was, very scenic and very pretty because there's the courts and then there's the river, which is really nice. And in this sequence is kind of intimate where he talks to Minetti. He mentions to Minetti, he's sorry that he failed him. He has not been able to find Max. It's a personal thing. They went there when they were kids. So it's a nice personal moment for my character. And he's regretful. He's regretful because of the way things happen. And I just thought this was just kind of lovely to shoot. This was early in the morning when I shot this. Early in the afternoon. And it had rained on my way in, jogging in there. And here's a little pebble that I'm going to throw in the water. And it's a great way to get out exposition because he's talking from his heart personally to Minetti, who unfortunately has been killed. And he feels like he's really failed his friend. And again, this was a fun character to play with such a strong motivation. And I didn't want him to be viewed like the typical character. I wanted the audience to kind of feel for him in his dilemma. Even though they're on Max's side when they've watched the first film, people are people. They're, every single one of us are capable of good and capable of bad. So here I am watching one of Max's films from the original movie. And I'm like, Jesus, this guy's a terrible filmmaker. And then we cut to a film which was actually called The Day in the Life of a Zombie, which is a hilarious film that Greg shot really, really well at his apartment that he shared with Natalia before they got married. And I had done the voiceover for this film, and it was so much fun. And it was shot extremely well. I believe Ian Keeney had helped out, and maybe even filmmaker Joe Valenti had lent equipment for this. And we call it The Day the Zombies Died this time. And there's Natalia looking quite good as Greg goes to attack her as the zombie. And she kicks him and knocks him over there. And, yep. And then she's going to shoot him. And then, boom, Finn. I still think to this day that there's nothing like a great movie trailer. And it was fun to take these movies that Greg and Natalia had made and then have it like Max and his wife had made them and put their little spin on it, just kind of make them into a movie trailer. Later, we're going to see one that's kind of a knockoff of Jaws. Meanwhile, my character is obsessing on Minetti's death again and what happened afterwards. This was a sequence that was cut from the original, which was Max standing in the door talking to Minetti after he was dead. It was much more appropriate in this film, and very, very funny stuff with him leaving and coming back and then talking to Minetti again and then finally leaving. So much great chemistry between Greg, who played Max, and Scott, who played Minetti, because they were friends in real life. Along with me, the three of us were such good friends, and I think that chemistry you can see on screen. Then my character starts to wonder what would have been like if Minetti got to fight back. And we cut to this funny video that Greg had actually made with Scott years ago, where they're fighting and there are sound effects and punching effects, and it's like a video game. So we decided to throw that in because I just thought it was just really, really funny. This was actually shot at Scott's house in Toms River, and just the use of the fast and slow motion and the choreography and the music was just so darn funny. And my character is saying now that, maybe I've done this too long, I'm tired, I need a cup of coffee, a blowjob, something. Now, this will all eventually lead into a dream sequence that was actually shot at the beginning here at Point Pleasant Boardwalk. Again, you make these little short movies, you don't know where you're going to make them. I was with my wife on the boardwalk when I realized this would just be a great location for a dream sequence. So I shot a bunch of this stuff. I even have a Max voiceover in here that Greg did. And I'm walking along, and there's going to be a film tie-in to the movie Big. We're actually going to see Zoltar. And he's saying, what do you wish, or something along those lines. And I'm going to tell him what I wish for is to find Maxwell Thomas Fillmore. I'm so glad my wife shot this sequence. And again, it's another movie tie-in. And I love the movie tie-ins because it's Max, and he's such a movie guy that was such a big part of the first movie. And I love to throw it into the second one. So now we cut to the sequence that was cut from the original film, which is Max running. This is up the stairs at Ocean County College. And in the stream continues, I'm running after him, but I'm there actually at the track at Freehold. I made it into black and white to kind of put it together better. And I thought it cut together really nicely, like I'm kind of like right behind him or close by. And it was fun to do. And though we did not have a scene together yet until the end of the movie, it was just nice to see us closer or getting closer or feeling closer. Now, part of this will lead into an old film that we had made at Freehold Raceway years before. And I was able to take bits and pieces of that film starting right here and cut it into this dream sequence. And it's really nice showing Max coming up the stairs after me. And we'll see that he has a gun. So that's just made it kind of like a really, really neat sequence. And I'm sure that the audience has already figured out probably within the first couple seconds that this is a dream sequence. But it was just so much fun, and the black and white was great. That's the Freehold Raceway TV control room. That's me hiding out from my point of view shot, and then I'm watching him. And again, doing the current sequences in black and white and cutting into this film, the short film, black and white, just it was seamless. It worked really, really well, and it was fun. And again, that's the control room. And he goes right there, and I'm going to walk right behind him with the hat. And then in the sequence here, I'm not going to have the hat on because that was part of the old film, and I'm going to raise a knife to get him. And he's going to turn, and he's going to shoot me. We hear the sound effects. Then I wake up from the dream. And I wake up, and we also realize I'm wearing a wedding ring the whole time, which is my real-life wedding ring, and that's a picture of me and my real-life wife, Beth. And talking about, we get the sense that this guy has lost some things because of this obsession, one of which is a relationship with his wife. Now we cut to the sequence where he got something in the mailbox, which was actually taken inside the mailbox there in Lake Riviera. And what did he get? But a Hooper action figure from Jaws. Wait a minute. Jaws. The wheels start turning with this guy. Jaws, that's one of Max's favorite films, and he's so darn obsessed with him. that he's thinking, hey, this means something. Maybe Max is trying to get in contact with me. So he calls Special Agent Johnson again, my brother, my real-life brother, Chris. And we cut to a sequence here, which is like the Jaws knockoff, this footage that Greg did in Florida, which was really a lot of fun. This whole thing saying, this is, something is in the water or something is back in the water, and, and bump, 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 Jaws 5. This time he's pissed, which is a knockoff on This Time It's Personal from Jaws the Revenge, probably one of the worst sequels ever made. And we cut back to Freehold Raceway, and that is my good friend Dan Adey, who I met, who is a cameraman at Freehold Raceway and really good friend, and he plays the character of my neighbor. And we're like, oh, why is this guy here? And we got to shoot this down by the Winter Circle, which was a lot of fun while the horses were doing kind of their warm-ups in the morning. And we're just having this conversation, and basically the conversation ends with me realizing that his two kids were fighting, and one of them put the action figure of Hooper in my mailbox. Now the sequence ends with my character going, oh, fuck, because I sent that action figure to the FBI to try to get, information on Max, maybe Max's prints, because I thought Max sent it to me, because that's how obsessed I was. Why would Max give away his location or do anything stupid like that? But I realized, oh, wait a minute. Oh, Jesus. So I was wrong all along. So I come back to the house drunk, which was actually really a lot of fun to play. I just walked in with a wine bottle from the house, and I was just taking a swig. And then I go to one of the things that I keep doing in this movie is talking into a pocket tape recorder. So I go to do that again, and then I really can't. And then I just kind of just throw the thing over my shoulder because I'm so wasted. We've all been this kind of drunk before, and I thought it was fun to play. But he really feels worthless because he just misconstrued that whole thing with his neighbor, putting the Hooper action figure in his mailbox. He feels pretty darn stupid about the whole thing, and he thinks that he's pretty much worthless. And his obsession is getting him nowhere. He gets to drink again, and we find him back talking to his wife in the picture. And there we go. He goes to sleep. He wakes up the next morning after he's having his coffee from his hangover, and he hears knocking at the door. So we're like, oh, what's this knocking? So he goes down and finds something. We have no idea. This is back at the house in Lake Riviera, in fact, where we shot this. And what is this that he's got? It looks like a poster. What kind of poster is this? We have no idea. So he is going to open it up. And again, that's going to be another movie reference. I'll give you a hint. What movie? You're going to need a bigger boat. Dun 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 dun. He got a Jaws movie poster, which is sent to him with a note from the FBI saying, you're going to need a bigger boat. So they're making fun of him. He thought he was onto something, that it was Max, when he had sent an action figure, which was, one from his neighbor's kids. So he's feeling pretty stupid about this. So he goes back to the university campus where Max was at, and he starts thinking about Max again. And we cut to this location, and then we show a flashback from this location, what it was like before it changed. So it was cool being back on campus again, which will be foreshadowing for later in the film when I will go back and me and Max will be there together. This sequence never made the cut of the original film, but I'm really glad it ended up in this one. And here I am in Bailey Park in Toms River talking into a tape recorder about things, talking about Jane, talking about Sandy, just some references back to the first film, and wondering about Max, and also mentioning that I feel for Max, which I thought was an interesting choice to make, that this character, despite the high stakes that he has, and that he has said that if him and Max are together, one of them is going to die, he can empathize with what he went through, the kind of cruelty that was inflicted upon Max on campus. So I thought that was kind of an interesting and different place to go with this character, rather than just be vengeance-filled. There's Dan 80 again on the left, and that gentleman who just pointed up the stairs who's walking toward the elevator is Corky Spittlehouse, who is one of the greatest guys in the world that I've had the fortune of working with at Freehold Raceway almost 20 years now. And that great Jaws shirt that Dan is wearing is fantastic. So we meet up at the track for this little sequence. It's like he's caught up with me, and I'm always like, oh yeah, good to see you, or whatever. And they just start talking. They have this nice conversation, and Dan and I had this nice rapport that we always do. We always say we're going to get together and have a podcast because we talk so much about film and actors, and. And here we're just able to just put the camera down, sit in the stands, and let it flow. And there's some exposition here, but it's done entertainingly. And basically, I found out from him that he got that Jaws shirt from like a retro Jaws screening in Florida. And there was some guy who got up and was like going nuts on him and his kids when they were there because his kids like kicked the seat, and he was saying he was a Jaws fan, and then even mentioned that he was in Africa. And there you go, boom, Africa. That's where Max is, in Florida. So it all comes about right then and there. He discovers what he has to do. That Jaws shirt that Dan is actually wearing, I got from Edgartown and Martha's Vineyard, where Jaws was actually shot. I got that on my honeymoon, so it was cool giving it to him. So there's the moment, the close-up, when I realize he's talking about Max. And then I'm going to show him a picture in my wallet and say, is this what the guy looked like? And he's going to verify and be like, yeah, that's him. He looks a little younger there, but that's him. And then I'm going to be like, holy shit. And I'm going to get up, and I'm going to be on my way to Florida. And Dan does this little thing going, okay, because I just leave, which was a great improv bit by Dan, which was hilarious. And I'm on my way to Florida, and we cut back to Dan, and he's like, that asshole stole my action figure, which was really funny. Dan was great to work with. And then all of a sudden, we're on the way to Florida. Now, a lot of this footage actually came from the airport in Florida years ago from a short film that I did. So it was nice that's from Tampa Airport. So it was nice to be able to do that. And this shot was actually in Lakeland, Florida. So I got some Florida in there, as well as some footage of Greg on a surfboard in Florida with his wife, Natalia. And there I am on the way there. I'm on the way to Florida. And again, we cut back to that footage, so we get that sense that I'm coming closer and closer to Max, which was just an absolute ton of fun. And then we get there and we find out that I call my neighbor and ask him, and he tells me the name of the Retro movie theater where he saw Max. So I go there, which is actually, for budgetary reasons, just the Marquee Theater in Toms River off Route 37. Couldn't go to Florida for that. This little sequence here, as some exposition is going on, and voiceover is actually at the Brick Diner, where we shot this sequence. Here I am outside Big Lots in Bricktown, New Jersey, in that plaza, and while some more dialogue is going on. And then we flash back to his old boss, played by Arnold Sidney, and we realized that Max actually killed him. So that was cool. So Max got revenge on that guy for firing him. This is actually the at-home store in Brick, and I just thought that this was a great shot. I thought it was really cool, just going from aisle to aisle. And we realize I want my revenge on Max, and there's a gun. So we got that slow motion shot of the gun, and now this is Max's house, which is actually looking very Florida-like, even though it is Toms River, New Jersey, me and Beth's house. So that was kind of cool to cut that in, and here I am, taking off the glasses. Where is Max? We have this really good suspenseful music. We don't know what's going to happen. Are they finally going to meet up with each other? We've been waiting for at least 38 minutes and 45 seconds at this point, but he goes in the room, which is our guest room, and there's a big movie poster there. There's popcorn that says "The End," lights, camera, action. And we found out that Max cleared out like an hour before. Somehow he knew, because Max is always one step ahead of him. The painting in the back is of John Morrison. You saw that really quick. You also saw that in the background earlier when I was on the phone with Sampson. He was my acting teacher and a wonderful, wonderful guy. Also my wife's first husband. Terrific guy. So I'm glad he actually made a cameo in the film. Best acting teacher I ever had, who unfortunately died at the age of 60. Now we're here at Max's father, and we find out that Max's father died, which has quite an effect on Max and will change what he does the rest of the film, in fact. So all of a sudden we see Special Agent Johnson, who we found out posts a bunch of guys undercover at Max's father's funeral, hoping that he was going to show up, but Max never does. But Johnson sends Brandt an audio recording that Max sent to the children that his father had. And the recording is kind of creepy because it's done in a modified voice. And Max is saying, he raised me before you little shits were born, and then warns them never get involved with the movies. And then tells them that, of course, the voice is modified for dramatic effect. Thank you, have a good day. Which was fun, which is dark comedy. It's uncomfortable, it's creepy, but it's funny, and that's its reality. So I thought that worked out really, really well. And I'm glad my wife had this old recorder so we could sell this sequence. So, right after this, Brandt gets a call, and it's Max saying, I'm going to a place that you'll never find me. And then he hangs up. And then Brandt puts the phone to his chest because he feels so close to Max in such a strange, obsessed way. And that's the first time that we realize that Max knows who Brandt is. So now a year goes by, and Max shows up with a gun in his hand. This was shot in the upstairs room in my old home in Lake Riviera. This was when Greg came back to New Jersey, and we shot this sequence, and it was just so much fun. There's the shadow of the gun that he's holding. There's Greg looking at the Jaws poster, so this little joke pays off when he says, nice poster. There's the shadow of the gun again. And now Brandt has been forced to drive somewhere. We don't know where. And they have a conversation about their life. And it was a fun conversation because not only does it have some comedy in it, but, Brandt realizes that, Max has gone off and gotten married, whatever. He has lost his own wife, his own relationship, his best friend, and he just hasn't been able to let go of everything, and Max has kind of moved on in his life. And and he's still bitter and upset about Minetti, and Max tells him it had to happen. He had no choice. He had to kill Minetti. And I love that these two characters can come together and have this conversation. And though there is the tension that Max has the gun on him, they both kind of bare their souls to each other, in a sense, during the sequence, which is not typical, not exactly what you'd expect. Brandt is still upset, still bitter, still angry about the whole situation, also realizing how much time he spent obsessed with Max, how much time out of his own life, and just being here back in front of the Fine Arts Building at Ocean County College, where Greg and I had met in 1990 doing the play Our Town and have been best friends ever since. This was a special and nostalgic place for us. And this location, which was, the main location in the film the last semester, it was just very fitting. So it was fitting for the character of Max. It was fitting for the character of Brandt to be back there. Most importantly, it was fitting for Greg Wilson and Darren DeBarry to be back together in this place, acting where they first met and when they first acted together. And we just had a ball doing this. It was just such a wonderful time being back on campus. And campus had changed over the years, and Max's character even mentions about, how things have changed and as time has gone by. And I even show his character some empathy, talking about Sandy. But, I'm still very bitter about Minetti's death. Max, talks about his films. He still believes in them. He doesn't show them anymore, the movies he makes with his wife. He said he doesn't need the edification of that like so many people do now, commenting on current social media. Very, very interesting. I had the opportunity years back to come back to this campus and teach independent film twice a year for 5 years, and acting twice a year for 2 years, and it was just amazing. It was so nostalgic. It brought back so many memories of me and Greg and our friend Scott, and plays we had done and conversations we had and films we had made or films we had talked about. So it's a very special place for us, Ocean County College, which is now Kane College, actually. It's amazing how you can return to a location many times in the course of your lifetime, not unlike a film or a book. And you're different. You're wiser. You've made more realizations. Yet you can still see so much of your life in one location, and Ocean County College is that location for me. I remember after high school saying to my mom I didn't want to go to college. I was planning on going to Elmira College where I was accepted. And my mother said, well, if you're not going to go, then at least go to Ocean County College. And I remember we were on Manasquan Beach. I was 18 years old, and I'm so glad because that decision changed my whole life. I've met so many wonderful people on that campus, people that are still my friends to this day, Greg Wilson and Scott DiPaolo, John Geckel, who I used to go to the movies at the Low Seacourt in Toms River. God, do I miss that movie theater. Great acting teachers like John Morrison. And little did I know, I met my future wife there in my first show at 18 years old at 1990, having no idea that we would be married years later. So you don't know where life is going to be, and that kind of ties into this final conversation at the end. Max has never become the filmmaker he's wanted to become. His life hasn't turned out the way he thought it was going to. And Brant Williams feels the same way, being obsessed for 20 years where he could have been living his life. But he realizes that Max has come back for one reason and one reason only, and that is to protect the woman that he loves. So we know from that point on that Brant Williams' death is inevitable. The fact that he couldn't give it up, he just couldn't give up his obsession with avenging Minetti, finding Max, and killing him, that turned out to be his tragic flaw. And we tease the audience for a minute where we think Max is going to let him go. He lets him go to the car. Williams goes to the glove compartment to look for his gun. It says boom in there. Max says boom. And he knows right at that moment that he lost. Car explodes. He's dead. Max dances to Hooray for Hollywood. And that, my friends, is the end. Thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. This has been 20 years of my life, these two films, The Last Semester and The Final Murder. And it brought back a rush of terrific memories. Thank you, cast and crew, everybody who made it happen, especially Greg Wilson, Scott DiPaolo. Movies are visual stories that we will return to many times during the course of our lifetime. And if you have the opportunity to make one or to be involved with one, there's just really nothing like it. Films have such an impact on us. They relieve burdens. They help us escape. They make us laugh. They make us cry. They make us feel. They make us fear. They make us dream. So many things. Thanks for coming on the journey with me.